Hello. I was gonna just go through. Let me come back to this other page. I was going to just start going through a little bit of how to set up your development environment for programming. And if I come over here, this is a video that SWAT was doing. I don't know. I just show you kind of generally some of this stuff, but this is a video you can download to kind of get an idea of some of the things that you do, like installers and other things. One thing that he talks about is that most of the software is Windows software, but it's possible to run it on Mac or Linux systems. It's just a matter of doing it a little different. But the starting point I would direct most people to is the WPI documents. This one is docs.wpilib.org, and actually the start of it's called this Zero to Robot, and going through this step will actually help you install software. That's on step 2. So if we step into step 2, there's offline and installation kind of guides. Let's start with offline preparation. So there's two main parts of the software. There's for Java programming, there's the where do we go down here? The Java C++ WPI lib installer, and if you click this link, it will take you to GitHub, which is their repository where they store the code. And you can see here this gives you releases. This is in this release, the 2022 Alpha 2 release. That's not usually alpha releases are the earliest releases. You got alpha, beta, and then kind of a general public release. If you were wanting to use the latest stable release, you'd go back to 2021. And if you go, let's see, and this just gives some information about what changes were made since the previous release. These are all connected to a lot of documentation that if you want to read a lot, you can read a lot. I came down to the bottom because usually the software or the assets are down at the bottom, and there's two choices usually. There's these upper boxes here. These are the different releases that you want to install. These are installation files. Down at the bottom it has the source code, so that's before the code's compiled. So if you download the source code, you'd have to download a compiler and go through a big process to get it all. This is a pretty big file. So if you look at, there's 4 types. There's Linux, Mac OS, Windows 32, and Windows 64. Pretty much all of ours are Windows 64. If you do download this, it's a 1.5 or 1.6 gigabytes, and the file type is an ISO, which is kind of a it's a mountable. It's like a CD. It's a mountable device basically. So it mounts basically, and or a DVD, like used to if you needed to install software off a CD, you would mount it onto the computer. So ISO is the type of file. So if you downloaded this, we'll go back to the that's one part of the software. The other part is what controls the robot, and that's in the game tools, FRC game tools. And that's National Instrument software. So you'll come to National Instrument, you'll come down, and the main thing to pick is the version number. So here's the newest version, 2021, and you'd come over here to download, or if you need to download the full offline file, which is 1.2 gigabytes, you can come over there. But the game tools also, I'm pretty sure it also contains what you need to program the radio and program the RoboRio, but it's something you'll need. Maybe not necessarily on your own computer. You generally don't need it just to develop, but you will need it to control the robot. And so that's the two main pieces of software, but there's a couple other pieces. There's third-party libraries and software. Most of the third-party libraries, there's a way to install them once you're programming. But there are some softwares for controlling and for setting up and configuring the motor controllers mainly. And I don't know if that will. It may give something here. Oh, this tells you kind of how to install libraries, but the ones that are important are the Rev software that we use for SparkMax, and we'll see if that. And it's hardware client. So this first one, the hardware client. Oh no. Let's see. Did I lose it? Okay. Maybe there. Okay. It tells you here the latest Rev hardware client is 1.3. So you'd click and run this executable, and you'd be able to run that to control SparkMax controllers and things like that over USB-C. But we'll get to, I'm going to duplicate that so I can save that. And I'm going to go back and across the road, electronics, Phoenix. Phoenix tuner installer is this framework. And again, if you go down, we're on GitHub, if you go down to where it's assets, and just make sure that you pick the latest release. So, and you want the whole framework that contains the tuner. They periodic release kind of partial releases sometimes, so just make sure. In this case, the newest one is 15 or 5.19.4.1, and this is just how they separate their version number. So 5 would be the major version, and then 19 is the next most important revision, and then 4 and 1. I don't know if 19 refers to the year 2019, when they maybe first started finishing this version, or it just depends. So you have in here, you have 3 versions. This top one doesn't say Windows, but it's the Windows version. These bottom ones say Linux and Mac OS. So you're able to do that. Let's see. Okay, so we got third-party software. Let's go back to So we should have all the software in the process of being installed, or knowing where to get it and download it. But quickly we'll kind of look through and see if there's anything. Okay, this is the LabVIEW installer, but we used LabVIEW probably 4 years ago now, or 3 or 4 years ago now, and we don't plan on using it as our software. Game tools. This just kind of shows how to. They recommend uninstalling a version, and it's good to read through or just kind of follow along, because there may be something like that that changes how it behaves. So if you load it up with each year, it installs a new version, and if you have several versions on it, it may, I don't know, may not behave like we expect it to. And okay, so I think here's running. If you click the link where it downloaded the small file, it runs an executable, and you follow the prompts. If you downloaded an offline file, you have to, and it's an ISO file, you have to right click on it and click mount. But anyway, that's how you would go about it, and then accept the user agreements. There's nothing. Disable Windows Fast Start. This is recommended. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And then it will kind of go through. It might take a while. And as far as license keys, I don't think. Oh, okay. There is an activation step. And but right away you don't have to activate it. It'll take a little bit before that might cause an issue. If you want to create an account with National Instruments, it's free and not a problem. But and okay, when the seasons come, we'll probably get a serial number. This seems to be only an issue with the Vision module, but it's not something that's typically an issue. Okay. Oh, it just says mainly you turn off the update service, because this is kind of the version, and they'll give you new versions if there's some problems, and you'll have to reboot. So that's installing the FRC game tools. And then so the WPI lib installation guide, that you can follow along. Also, it's another one where you have to mount the installer and launch the executable. So when it mounts, it's just like a DVD drive or a flash drive or something, and so the file will be inside that you can then run the executable. And so then you just follow along the prompts. So if you have VS Code installed for some reason, it installs its own kind of version of VS Code. And so generally you'd come and have to click to download it. You can skip it if you've already downloaded a copy of the right VS Code, but not recommended typically. And so I'd just follow along and download the single install copy unless you have reason to do otherwise. And then go ahead and install all the items. So you'll need the and we may not use the C++ compiler, but it's just easier to put everything. And as far as whether you install just for the user or for the whole computer, that's kind of up to you. I think I generally just do for all users unless I have reason not to. Oh, it says you can do that if you only do for the user, you don't require administration access, so you can install it on some other system. But let's see. So that will install VS Code. Let's see what they had next. So that, okay, so now we should have all the code that, or all the programs we need installed. And we'll come back and skip step 3, programming. We'll go right to programming your robot in C++, in Java. And to do that, we use the Visual Studio Code. And so to get to that, usually it has the year number, so a lot of times I'll do like 20. I'll just type in 2021 in this case, and it will give 2021 VS or WPI lib VS Code, and you can open that. And the WPI lib is an extension that installs, so you can see that it's an extension. And this says we don't have any folder open or repository or any code, so we can start from blank. And in this one it says bring up the Visual Studio Code command palette with Control-Shift-P. You can do that, or I typically just go over and click it, which is this hexagon. And so this gives you a lot of options, WPI lib. So the command palette, so if you just, let's see, if you just do Control-Shift-P, like I said, it brings up a command palette, and you can see it gives a lot of, you can extend down of all the different things you have. But if you type in WPI lib, it only shows the options of what you can do with it. Typically you do something like, so they got start tool, build robot code, manage your libraries, create a new project. So we don't have a project, so probably create project would be the first thing you'd want to do. And it opens up this this project creator. So I'm going to go back and just see if that's what, follow along and see what they're doing. So they go down, create a new project, and that brings up their window. And so quickly we'll look through the project. So there's a couple of different options for creating projects. The first choice is whether to make kind of your own project or to use an example project. If we go back to our documentation and come down somewhere, examples and tutorials, you can click and it will take you and give you basic examples, and all these would give you kind of a description. So if you wanted to build I don't know, lots of different things, a tank drive, or some different examples. There's a lot. A lot of, and we won't talk this. A lot of the examples I would eventually look towards are these command-based examples, like inline hatchbot is a good one, that is similar to what how I like code to be. But there's also these examples for more complex things that they've been working on, like the state space examples, a simulation, a physics simulation. And there's also kind of really basic examples. So like up here where it said sensor examples. So if you need to read an encoder, or sample the gyro, or read an ultrasonic sensor, or I don't know, even up here are some simple or more complex control examples, or here's basic examples. How to use pneumatic solenoids, demonstrates the use of solenoids class with the set of joystick buttons. And they're going to be a little different just depending on all the command-based examples use different command-based framework, which is what we use, but we'll quickly talk about the other examples. But so if you picked an example for that, and then you have to decide whether it's C++ or Java, so Java, then it gives you all those examples like above. And but we won't do an example. We'll do template. So the templates again give you some different options, and there's timed skeleton, robot-based skeleton, command robot, old command robot, ROMI, educational robot, and the main two types are either command robot or timed robot. And ROMI is for the little robot, but we'll do a timed robot. I don't always do these, but it'll be good to see. And the thing about the timed robot is it's pretty simple, but for what we do, it's the more complex the robot gets, the more complex a timed robot becomes. So we'll pick a new project folder, which I usually put in documents, and we'll give it a project name, 1108 example, timed, I'll say it like that, and then create a new folder. So I want it to go in this folder, our team number 1108, and I'll go ahead and enable desktop support. If you want to do a simulation, you have to have desktop support enabled, and you can do this anytime. And we'll generate the project in the current window. And so now we have a project, and over here on the right, or on the left, I mean, you have your file structure. So this is the same. I don't know if, let's see. If I come here, like if I right click, it'll say find folder. No, whoop, that's not what I want. I want open, reveal in File Explorer. That's what I want. So now, if you go to the File Explorer, you get the same these dot Gradle, dot everything like this, and um, so src is the source code. There's a deploy folder, which if you put certain things in here, when you deploy, it goes on the robot, but that's what we use for some of the drive paths. But most of the actual code goes in under Java, and in the TimedRobot, there's two initial files, or Java files, in main, and we'll just main's the Java file that really starts everything, but in our case it doesn't really do anything. It just, you have one method, a main method, and it starts the robot. And so we don't change main typically. Robot, in TimedRobot, you can change robot. In command-based, you rarely change robot. But so coming from the top, you have just the package. So in this case, frc robot from Java, you add a dot between, so a period between. So frc.robot is where robot.java is located. And then you have some of these imports. Imports are the code that you're borrowing from. In this case, we borrow from a TimedRobot, and also from these dashboard and tools. And there's, if you go to import edu.wpi.first.wpi, and you can see right away this starts to type for me. This is called IntelliSense, and so this is very handy. But this wpi-libj is the library from wpi-lib, and so it contains a lot of stuff, and it's mainly where you'll borrow different tools or different code to use in your own programs. It's written specifically for the FRC robots. Now, you may, if you come back here, I don't know, you can probably go like com dot, I don't know, no, com dot, you can maybe org. You'll see there's some different, if you do org, com, or edu are really typical ones. This is a machine learning, e.g. Some of this gets pulled in because it's getting used in wpi-lib. Let's see, what was the com dot? Did I have one? Fast sun.bean, let's see, sun.java. Anyway, there's kind of different standard library stuff you can get into if you need to. And the more Java you know, the more tools like that you might know, and that can solve some specific problem. Okay, so coming down in the code, we have our class declaration, and this declares this robot class. So robot is the same as the this Java file is the class file. So whatever its name is this name, and it extends this TimedRobot. We can actually go to the definition of it, what a TimedRobot class. This is just a different class, and this is a little more complex, but like any class, it has some methods and has some parameters, or variables, if you want to call them variables. And so we're just borrowing through this extends that TimedRobot. But so the first thing we do here is we give it a string default, my auto, and also a string whether the auto selected, which we haven't populated with a value yet. And then we create this sendable chooser. This is just a dashboard feature that lets you select different values. And that's just the top of the class. And then the first method we have is robot init. And that's so robot init is the robot initialization. It's the first thing that you do when the robot turns on, pretty much. And in this case, we were populating this sendable chooser, mchooser, with it's a default option. So this is the default auto is k default auto, and the second option for auto is my the custom auto. And then we're accessing this smart dashboard put data method to place this auto chooser on a dashboard. So that's what the initial thing does. The second method, and this is called every robot packet. This is our robot periodic. This is what is continuously executing on the robot, and it's on a 20 millisecond loop. And so if you put a well, there's a lot of different things you could put in robot periodic, but it's something that's running continuously. Now there should be, okay, yeah, let me make, along with the robot and robot init, there's also an autonomous init, and there's a teleop init. So these are different modes of the robot operation. So autonomous is when the robot's running the code by itself, and the teleop is when it's being joystick controlled, typically. And so in autonomous, it's checking the chooser of what auto mode selected, and then it's using this system.out.println, which is the standard way you write a message out in Java. So this would write to your output terminal that the auto selected is whichever auto you select. And this is a good thing to do for debugging, because later you can look back at your messages and know which things were selected or this sort of thing. Now, let's see. And we don't do a lot of this. There's a kind of a fine line that it takes up some system resources to print lines, but we probably should add more print lines than we have. It'd be something to kind of look into, or figure out how to log without printing to the output terminal. Anyway, along with the inits, there's the periodic. So there was the robot periodic. Robot periodic might be something that you needed to do, say, if you need to do this both in the autonomous, and say you have sensors you need to read or something like this, that happen both autonomous in the autonomous time and in the teleop time. Okay, teleop init is where you would maybe, I don't know, say if you wanted to reset some value between your autonomous and teleop, you would put it here. And then teleop periodic, this is where your joystick controls would go typically. So, and then when the robot's disabled, you also have options for that. And then there's a separate test mode, and you have options for that. So this is generally the robot .java file. It's not too different for other stuff. So I'm gonna cut this off here, and I'll pick up more on our own code. So, and also I wanted to get into how what to do when you modify code, how to save code, how to get code from our source repository, how to save and put it into the safe source repository, and some things like that. So that's all for now.